Shabbat Shalom. It's great to be here. As many of you know, we're having a teen Shabbat with so many of our teens from all over the world, really all over the United States. We're very excited to be here with them. And of course, with all of our friends streaming from all over the world. So this Shabbat, as we know, it's a Shabbat in the month of Elul, in the most important month of the year that leads to the two most important days of the year. The work that we do in this month prepares us to what happens on Rosh Hashanah. And of course, we know what happens on Rosh Hashanah is the way the entire next 12 months, the entire next year is going to be. And the Kabbalists teach that the work of Elul, every time has unique work that we're meant to be focused on in our spiritual development. The work of the month of Elul is called Teshuvah. Teshuvah, generally, we understand, we look back at the year, we look at our lives, what we did, what we didn't do, people we hurt, people that we should have assisted more, and so on and so forth. But in reality, and this is what's so beautiful and exciting about the teachings today, you realize that there's really only one thing that we need to do teshuvah about, that we need to correct, that we need to look into and fix. And that is certainty. Certainty means that we need to look back throughout this entire year and remember the times that we had fears, and remember the times that we had doubt, and remember all the times that we did not have certainty in the light of the Creator, which simply means because what is happening in my life right now is coming from the light of the Creator and therefore must be for my benefit. And therefore there can't be fear, there can't be doubt, there can't be worry. There should only be happiness all the time. But of course, as most of us can attest, that wasn't our experience throughout this year. And therefore there were moments, maybe days, maybe sometimes weeks, maybe sometimes months of fear and doubt and upset and anger, that the real focus of Elul, the real focus of what we call Teshuvah, is just to fix certainty. To help us do this work, I want to speak about a teaching. It's really only one word. A teaching from a great Kabbalist, of Breslov. And really, as I said, very often when we learn, when we teach, it's really one word, but we have to expand upon it to make it really part of our consciousness. So I'll read some of his words, because we know when we read the words of the Kabbalist, it awakens that light and makes it more possible for us to do the work, to internalize the teachings and do the work. He quotes a verse in Hosea. It says, "Ubiyad haneviim adameh." It says, in the hands of the prophets, I give the power of creativity, which is one way to translate that word. The what he calls the Koach Hamedameh, right? It's interesting. Human beings, I wonder, maybe nowadays there's more research about it. There's always that question, do animals dream? We know humans dream. Do animals dream? Are animals creative? Meaning and of course, not necessarily in action, but in thought. What is it and why is it that each one of us has a Koach Hamedameh, the ability to create stories? Where does that come from? And why do we have it? And how do we need it to be used? But it's interesting, and I wonder if anybody knows, after our sharing today, maybe we can share with us if anybody knows if they've done research whether animals create stories, right? We create stories all the time. It's funny, right? Almost, of course, there are certain, we call them the 3% of real problems, but 97% of the time that people call me with problems, it's a problem that is the Koach Hamedameh. It's a story that was made up. Why is this person behaving to me in this way, right? Why, am I afraid of this? And so on and so forth. Where does that come from? That doesn't come from natural human logical thought, right? Because what's logical human thought? What's happening to me right now? The current reality. But that's not where problems come from. Problems come from the Koach Hamedameh. And interestingly, the verse in Hosea tells us that the highest souls, prophets simply in that generation were the leaders, were the teachers, but really a spiritual teacher. What is a real spiritual teacher? A person who's able to have a Koach Hamedameh, the ability to create stories. Very interesting. Ikar tikun uberur hamedameh, that the way to fix the creative, the story, that part within us, that very strong part within us, which is at the root of any fear. Why do we have a fear, right? The person has a fear of flying. Why is he or she afraid of flying? Something might happen. Is it happening right now? Of course not, right? Then it wouldn't be a fear. Then it would be a reality. But the story goes, what if this happens or that happens and so on? Person, any fear that we have and almost any upset that we have. This person did this. We're not even so worried about it. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. We're not even worried about what's happening right now, even if it's a problem. But the problem might get bigger. And then what am I going to do? But what's the problem as it exists today? You can handle it? Yeah, I can handle it. But I'm worried this is going to happen and that's going to happen and that's going to happen. So the Koach Hamedameh, the creative force, the force that each one of us has that creates stories is being diverted, is being really, taken to a negative place. And this is the idea, what's the purpose of the spiritual work? To fix our creative force, our story creating force. And a true teacher, you ask the question, why do you go to a spiritual teacher? Well, they'll say, I want to study, I want to understand, I have questions and so on. No. The only reason to go to a spiritual teacher, to have a spiritual teacher, is that they will enable me to fix my storytelling, the Koach Hamedameh, that creative force within us. Even last night, I won't go into the details, somebody, I was talking to one of our kids, and they were talking about a fear, right? Well, what was the fear? Of course, it wasn't anything that was going on. It was something that might happen. That's a Koach Hamedameh. So when you understand that the entire purpose of the spiritual work is to fix the Koach Hamedameh, is to fix the story-creating force that each one of us has. And this maybe is the most important part of the teaching. Uchshenitatken hamedameh, when you are able to fix the storytelling part of you, al yedei ze nitatken ha'emunah ha'amitit ha'kedosha. Then and only then can you achieve certainty, pure, 100% holy certainty. V'nitbatel emunot kazviot. And you can completely remove from your consciousness any type of negative stories that you have created or false stories that you have created. Ki ikar ha'emunah. We talk about certainty all the time, and I don't know that we truly understand where it stems from. What is that force within us that enables us to have to have certainty? Tluya bekoach hamedameh, is dependent on the story-creating force within us, the creative force within us. Now, I want to talk about this because this is fundamental, and I think it's something most of us either don't understand or haven't truly internalized. What is certainty? What is certainty? Certainty is something is happening, something negative. A person just got a call from a doctor, from a lawyer, from a friend. Something negative is happening. So if you focus on what is actually happening, okay, it's not good. It's not good. What is certainty? Certainty is creating an alternative story. What's the alternative story? Even though I don't see how this is completely from the light of the Creator, it must be from the light of the Creator. And therefore, if it's from the light of the Creator that only is an essence of goodness, it must be that this situation is going to manifest ultimately as something good. So certainty is also a story we tell us. It's the true story, but it's still a story. Because when you're in the point of reality, that story is not obvious. You have to tell yourself, you have to create through what's called the Koach Hamedameh, through the force of creativity, or the story creating force within us, the true story. Now let's understand this. So we go through life, and we are always creating stories. Always creating stories. Every single day of our life, we're creating stories. None of us are living reality, and some of us might, there's spiritual teachers who say, all you should worry about is reality, but that's not true. What you should be concerned with and focus on is, how do I create the true story? What's the true story? The true story is emunah kedosha, pure, holy certainty. And this is, I think, the most important point. It's a zero-sum game. Let me explain that. You woke up this morning. Something's going to happen. You have, we'll call it 100 parts of creativity, of Koach Hamedameh, that force that enables you to create a story. Maybe your husband, your wife, your son, your daughter, your friend said something, and now you're creating the story. What are you doing? Let's assume, as probably most of us can attest, usually the story that we start creating is a negative story. And you're taking one piece, 10 part, 50 part, let's say 60 parts of the Koach Hamedameh, that force that enables you to create a story, and you've manifested down a negative story. And now you're upset, and now you're disappointed, and now you're worried about the future. And then something else happens. And now you're angry. Why are you angry? Because this person is doing this to me, and you're taking and you're creating a story. But where is that force to be able to create the story coming from? From your reservoir today of 100 parts, Koach Hamedameh, 60 parts already taken. Now you have 40 parts left. And now you create a story of anger at this person. How dare he? So on and so forth. I don't have to explain. I think most of us know the way these story creations work. Now you've used 100% of your Koach Hamedameh, 100% of your story creating force to create both false stories, but most importantly, you depleted your Koach Hamedameh. You've depleted your ability to create a story. Good or bad. That you choose if you're going to create a bad story or a good story, a true story or a false story, but you've just finished all of your creativity for the day. And then something happens. You get a call from a doctor. Now, we know, as the Kabbalists teach, that when a person receives news, even if ostensibly it might look like something not positive, if he or she is able to awaken certainty, he or she is able to transform that moment. Person gets a call from a doctor, and the doctor says something not so good. And the person who's spiritual, maybe he or she studies in the center, okay, I need to awaken certainty. But I can't. That person can't. Do you know why that person can't create certainty? They want to, desperately, they want to. They'll open up the Zohar, they'll go to their teacher, they'll call up their friends. Please help me awaken certainty. I know I need it now. But the person has no reservoir of story creating force left. He or she has used up their Koach Hamedameh, their force of creating a story, to create 100% of false stories up until that point. And therefore, when they need the force of certainty to be able to transform the situation, it's not available to them. And this is true in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year. Why did we fall to any extent that we did? Why did we get angry? Why were we upset? Why were we fearful? One reason. We used the Koach Hamedameh, that force of creating a story, and we created all kinds of false narratives, all kinds of false stories. But the worst part, and that's not the worst part, right? You would imagine that's terrible. You spent all day being angry or disappointed or worried. No, that's not the worst part. The worst part is that when you're going to need certainty, what is certainty? Certainty is telling a true story, right? This is happening right now, but I have certainty that it's from the light of the Creator, and therefore it's for my benefit. And then we know that force of certainty transforms the situation. When the person will need that force of certainty, the Koach Hamedameh is not available. The force to create that story has been depleted. So, the problem with using our Koach Hamedameh, our force of creating stories, to create false stories, to create stories that upset us, that worry us, is not just that we spend all day worried and upset. It's that when we're going to need, and we need certainty every day, big certainty, small certainty. And what is certainty? Again, to be clear, right? So you're going to need to be saying, and I want to be clear, that I hope, because hopefully at least we're all trying to live every single day with more and more certainty. Yes, this person just told me this, and it should be upsetting to me. This person just stole $100 from me. But I create a story, a holy story, a true story. This is from the light of the Creator. And therefore it must be for my benefit, and therefore I'm happy. That story can only be created through the Koach Hamedameh, through the force that enables us to create stories. But if you deplete your Koach Hamedameh, if you deplete your force of creating stories to create angry stories and worry stories and so on and so forth, there's no force left for the transformative force of creating the stories of certainty and this is important to understand. The bad stories make things worse, right? Not just because you experience them as worse, but because you're created a negative story we have the force of creation. The Koach Hamedameh, not only, and this is, I want to take a moment to explain it because it's very important. Let's talk about a person. He woke up in the morning and his wife said something to him that he didn't like, right? And now he starts creating. Now so that's what it was, 2-second interaction, but now the story. And again, as we said before, he's taking from his reservoir of creative. My wife doesn't appreciate me. How could she talk to me like that? Story depletes 30% of the story creative force that he has for the day. So his experience of the situation is negative. But what's worse, that's bad on its own. You're going to be upset for the next 6 hours. That's bad. But what's worse is that story that you created actually creates a reality that's also negative. So not only is your experience negative, you've actually created more darkness, more negative reality. Conversely, when a person uses the Koach Hamedameh, uses the force of creating a story, the creative force that each one of us has for the positive, which again, he gets a call from his friend. Do you know what your friend just did? He just said the worst thing about you, and you stop. And you say, I know that this is from the light of the Creator, and therefore it must be for my benefit. You're taking from your reservoir of creative story creation, the Koach Hamedameh, you're creating a positive story. That's a true story. So not only have you experienced this in the moment as positive, you also actually created that light, because certainty transforms the situation into positive. Anger transforms the situation into negative. So you compound either the curse or the blessing. You compound it, because it's not just your experience of it. When you make negative stories, it's going to be negative, but the negative story that you create, as we were speaking last night with one of our friends, you're creating now a dark reality. You're not just experiencing a dark reality, but you're creating a dark reality on the positive side. And this is why, again, at the core, but hopefully now we understand on a deeper level, we have to be creating the stories of holy certainty all the time. Because again, it compounds, right? As we said before. Because it's not just that when you're able to create the story of certainty, that the situation in the moment is positive, but you actually also create with that consciousness for it to be positive. Both the experience and the reality transform to positive. When you create a negative story, both the experience and the reality, chas v'shalom, are transformed into negative. And now there's one other element here. There's a lot here, but the other big mistake, the Kabbalists that we all make and that we have to be doing Teshuvah about, that brings us back to this Koach Hamedameh, this force, the storytelling force. We're all telling stories about ourselves. We live in what's the Kabbalists call the Alma, the Shikra, the world of lies. And therefore, a lot of the stories that we tell ourselves are not positive ones. Now, that can manifest in many different ways. I'll talk about 2 elements of it, but I hope that we all really take the time in this month to really use these teachings to go deep into ourselves. 2 stories. 1, I'm doing enough. I'm a spiritual person. One of the funniest things, some people don't see it as funny, but one of the funniest things that I've seen in the years of being involved in this study is when you see somebody who thinks that they're a spiritual person, and they might even be teaching spirituality, and they're really, it doesn't take more than 2 seconds to realize they're not spiritual at all, and they're probably some of the lower people spiritually in this world. But why is that possible? And this happens all the time throughout history. If you ask, for instance, in the history, Lavan Ha'arami, if you ask Lavan, right, who we know in the story of the Torah was a cheater and a liar, why, who are you? Who are you? What was his answer? I am Lavan. I am pure white. I am pure. So on the one hand, there's the full, and all of us are telling ourselves a false we've created through the Koach Hamedameh a full story of ourselves. I'm okay, I'm doing enough, or I'm amazing in an ego way. And that also, of course, is coming from the Koach Hamedameh. And we have to look throughout the year. And this is really the purpose of a spiritual teacher or a spiritual friend, is to make you realize, oh my God, I thought the way I was living my life, how I was pushing myself to grow and transform was good enough, was maybe even amazing. But in reality, it was so not who I'm supposed to be. On the other hand, of course, as well, where the Koach Hamedameh says to us, you're so much less than you think. Everybody knows about, the imposter syndrome, right? Where the person, I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, who's doing amazing things, but inside they're like, I shouldn't be doing this. I have no right to be doing this. All these stories. And the purpose of Teshuvah, what's Teshuvah? Teshuvah is to go throughout the year and find all these false stories, either stories that we're telling ourselves that are a lie for the positive or a lie for the negative, and fix them. And this is, as we said, the purpose of the month of Elul. Real Teshuvah is fixing our creative storytelling force, going throughout the year and finding what are the stories that I made up. I'm sure, again, if I asked any one of us, we can think of 5 times this year where we created a story. And the process of thinking through that and realizing that what we did is, as we said before, not only did we create a negative story and therefore had a negative experience, but we also took our creative force that was supposed to create a story of certainty later and did not allow ourselves to create it. That's the whole work of Elul. That's the whole work of Teshuvah. To look throughout the year and find the full stories. As we said, one full story, which I think is important for all of us to be thinking about, because we know that the potential of our soul is so much greater than what's manifesting currently in our lives and in the world. So what are the stories that I'm telling myself that I'm doing enough, that I'm manifesting enough, that I am, because I'm underappreciating my true force and power and essence, I allow myself to live a small life. On the other hand, what are the stories that I tell myself I don't need to correct? I'm doing fine. There's no problem here, and so on and so forth, and finding those false stories and fixing those as well. But those are 2 elements which are important to keep in mind as part of our process of Teshuvah. But I want to go back to the core, which is what we're talking about here, which, as we said, is the most important work. To realize, and this is where Teshuvah begins, I have a limited ability to create stories. And I'm supposed to be asked before, why do we have that ability? As Rav Ashlag reminds us, any ability we have is only for one purpose, to bring us closer to the light of the Creator. But it's a zero-sum game. There's a limited reservoir of ability to create a story. And any piece of energy, of creative force that creates a full story necessarily will not enable us to have the certainty that we need in the day. To be clear, when I woke up this morning, the Creator gave me 100 parts of Koach Hamedameh, of power, the ability to create a story. Not just because the Creator wanted to give it to me, for no reason, because the Creator knew in order for me to have and reveal the light that I'm supposed to reveal in this day, I need to use 100% of that creative force to create stories of certainty, to create light, to create the blessings that I'm meant to have. Any part, and when I get upset and I create a negative story, 5 parts out of 100, that means that 5 parts of 100 of the blessings that I'm supposed to have today, chas v'shalom, the person will not be able to manifest. Because those blessings, why did the Creator give me all those parts of the ability to create a story? It's because I'm going to need them in the day. And if I've wasted them on creating negative stories, they will not be available for me to create the positive story of certainty that I will need to manifest 100% of the blessings of the day. I hope this is clear. But this not only is it fundamental, but it's also hopefully scary. Next time, it's going to happen, I promise you. You're going to have an opportunity, probably 100 opportunities today, to create a negative story. Stop. Remind yourself, this reservoir that I have to create a story is limited, and I need 100% of it in order to create the stories of certainty that I'm going to need for the day to have 100% of the blessings of the day. So it's not only that it's stupid, it's a waste of time to create the negative stories of anger, of disappointment, of upset. But what it doesn't enable me to awaken the story of certainty, and therefore it does not enable me to manifest 100% of the blessings that I'm meant to manifest today. I hope this was clear. And again, as there's much more to this teaching, which we won't get into, but the purpose of a spiritual teacher, the purpose of a spiritual friend, I'll just read a few words. צריכים לחפש ולבקש מאוד. You should search for somebody to be your teacher, to be your friend. שיש לו רוח אחרת. That he has another spirit. In the times of the prophet, we called it prophecy. In our time, we can call it a different spirit. מה שאין נמצא בשאר ההמון. That most of the people don't have. כי בלא זה, מפני מה יזכה זה. The only purpose of being a teacher is to teach people about certainty, to be able to wake them up, or to wake the individual, to wake your friend up from the full story that he or she is telling them, to create stories of certainty. Very important teaching. And again, as I said, I really hope that I explained it well, and we understand. This brings us to our next point. If we understand that the entire work of Elul is to fix our Koach Hamedameh, to fix our story-creating ability that we've wasted away throughout the last 11 months. And because of that, we did not allow certainty to be awakened, and therefore we didn't allow the blessings that certainty awakens to become manifest. This gives us a beautiful, powerful insight to why the Kabbalists instituted to say one section from Psalm every single day in this month of Elul. Most of you know it's Psalm 27. And by the way, if you don't say it every day, man, women, children, everybody, I strongly, not me, the Kabbalists for thousands of years have said, I think I've shared this in years past, that if a person says this every single day, he or she, they say it's almost guaranteed to have a powerful Elul and a powerful Rosh Hashanah. Psalm 27, the David Hashem Ori V'Yishi. It begins with, and now we understand. The whole psalm is only one message, and therefore it's not. We spoke about this last night with the teens that are here. It's not about saying Psalm 27. It's about experiencing Psalm 27. Le David Hashem Ori V'Yishi. The Creator is my light and my Redeemer. Hashem Ori V'Yishi. Once you are connected in that way, then Bikrov Alai Mereim, no matter what negative things comes close to me or I think is coming close to me, I have no fear. Because I have certainty in the light of the Creator. And as I said, I strongly recommend, if you haven't seen it in the English translation, I would strongly recommend really understanding every single word in the Psalm. It ends with the words, and we'll actually read a little bit from the Kabbalists explaining it. But as I said, I was thinking about this yesterday as I was preparing for Shabbat. Really, I shouldn't have said anything, although it was a very important teaching. But really, all we should be doing is reading and understanding and connecting to the powerful words of Psalm 27. That's why this week's portion, there's the phrase, Tamim tiyeh Hashem Elokecha. Also, awakening certainty. That's all we need to fix. By the way, it's become a pattern. No matter how many, even if you've only been in this physical world 14 years, 15 years, 16 years, 50 years, we've damaged the pathways of the Koach Hamedameh. It's not just in 1 year, unfortunately for most of us. And therefore, the fixing of this month is only around the Koach Hamedameh. It's only around, not just from this year, from previous years, from previous incarnations. Shemerumaz bo inyan habitachon al Hashem. The whole purpose of saying Psalm 27, I strongly recommend every single one of you, make sure you understand every word in the Psalm, make sure you internalize it, and make sure not only you say it every day, but that you awaken this fixing of certainty, this fixing of the Koach Hamedameh. That's why, again, in this week's portion, there's a whole story of the battle When the battle comes, the Creator says, again, the whole purpose is not to create the story of fear, but to create the story of certainty. Ha'ikar, the most important work in life, the most important work in the month of Elul, the most important purpose of reading Psalm 27 every single day in the month of Elul, Shelo Yira, is that we lose all ability to have fear. Rak liftoach ba'Hashem berachamav shehu yoshieu mitzarav, that the light of the Creator will assist me in all things to defeat any enemy, internal and external, any fear, internal and external. And therefore the psalm ends, Kaveh el Hashem, reach out and again awaken that certainty in the light of the Creator. Chazak v'yametz libecha, then your heart will become strong, then your certainty will become strong. Bekaveh el Hashem, and then you will be able to awaken true certainty. That's the whole purpose of this Shabbat. And therefore I'll just end with another teaching from the great Kabbalist, the Ibrei Emet. Many of you might not remember this, that 30 years ago, 40 years ago, the Rav would spend almost every Shabbat just talking, not teaching. Of course, the Rav would also teach, but just talking about the power of the Torah, the reading of the Torah, and what that awakens within us. And I want all of us to be awakened to the merit that we have, not to hear teachings important, and hopefully today's teaching, which is so important, but to appreciate the moment that we're in, this Shabbat that we're in. And he says the following, Lazeh korim parasedra zo. Why do we read this week's portion on this Shabbat in the month of Elul? B'chedei lehashlim nafshenu b'bchinat hatmimut. Because what we need to fix, and that's the light of the Shabbat, every word that we're going to hear from the reading of the Torah is to fix, as we said before, our Koach Hamedameh, our creative storytelling force is so damaged. Again, I'm sure there's a few tzaddikim amongst us, but the rest of us have damaged. And the pathways of story creating, it's not just, I heard a lecture from Michael today, and now I'm so inspired, I'm only going to create positive stories. It's not going to happen. We have to beg the Creator on this Shabbat. And that's the purpose. This is why the Creator is coming to us on this Shabbat. That's the purpose of this reading. I know how damaged my Koach Hamedameh is. I know how damaged my story creating force is. Please, I beg of the light of the Creator, help me fix my Koach Hamedameh. She'anu lemudei nisim enosha'im me'Hashem yitbarach al pi nes hamerumaz b'sidra hazot. The miracle of this Shabbat is not just that we will understand based on the teachings that we just shared, but that the Creator is going to gift us, that we gather here together in Connecticut or any one of our centers with this consciousness, and we're going to beg the Creator, give me the ability to fix all my corrupted story-creating force, my Koach Hamedameh, and instill within me, through the light of this Shabbat, the ability, and this is possible. What is the Creator ready to give you and me and every single one of us? That by making the connection on the Shabbat and by begging to receive the light of the Shabbat, we will not have the ability to create a negative story ever again. We will only be able to create positive stories of certainty with the Koach Hamedameh. Now, will that happen? It depends on each one of our personal connection. But that's what's available. And we have to appreciate it, and we have to beg for that transformation. And B'ezrat Hashem, all of us will be blessed with the renewed force of the Koach Hamedameh, the creative story-creating force within us, to only tell ourselves stories of certainty, stories of certainty. This is from the light of the Creator. It's for my benefit. And not only will the experience be positive, as we said before, but compounded, our reality will only be positive and filled with the blessings that the light of the Creator desires to manifest in our lives. B'ezrat Hashem, we should have the zchut to understand this, on this Shabbat to beg for it, and then this Shabbat to receive it together. Shabbat Shalom.